In this video, we are going to break down Not Gonna Be Your Boo by Cloonee. And what we're going to do is just kind of break down the arrangement. The arrangement is the story of the hooks and groove over time. The hooks are things like vocals and sound design. And then the groove, what I call the groove, there's other terms for the groove, but what I'm calling the groove right now is the drums and the bass, the thing that people dance to. And at the end of the day, what people care about is they want something catchy on top of something dancey, right? They want a big, nice vocal hook or synth hook on top of a beat that they can dance to, and then they're really happy and the club goes crazy, the dance floor goes crazy. And arrangement is kind of the story of those two main characters over time. Sometimes that breaks down, right? And we get this nice big vocal, but people aren't really dancing. And then we build some tension and boom, we're right back in it. People are dancing, they're singing, they're having a great time. And so it's this constant kind of up and down, push, pull, tension, release. And that's what arrangement is all about. So let's see how Cloonee is kind of telling the story with his big vocal hook and the really cool kind of detunish sound design hook that he has in here, and try to steal some principles of arrangement and secrets that we can use in our own tracks to have huge festivals and dance floors go crazy just like Cloonee. All right, let's go. So just like usual, we're going to just map out the beat. I'm not going to go too deep into the beat because we're just kind of looking at the high level arrangement elements or characters. So is that 8 bars? Yes, it is. Okay. Nothing too crazy to note here other than the obvious vibe that's going on, kind of like a little bit of a retro feel. Definitely not part of what we could call as the meta with that electro sound. Very cool. Very, you can even hear the texture in the background. The kick doesn't have a really strong transient. The hat 909, a little bit trashy in a good way. A little bit like not super top end heavy. Just a really cool kind of retro sound. Very drum machiney, perfect. Okay, a little bit of a fill. And then here, one of the things we want to do when we're mapping out the arrangement is we want to note the big changes. So right here is still the intro, so who cares? But there was like a little bit of a hat lift. So I'm just going to make a note of that. And so you can hear this kind of MIDI, kind of darker 909 hat. But then here, there's a new layer that comes in, and it's just simply brighter, and it sits on top of the 909 hat. All right, kind of like I'll call it like a scratchy hat, because that is the term that comes to my mind when I hear that. And so if I was going to do a hat lift like this in the intro or anywhere else in the track that was inspired by Cloonee, I would go find a scratchy hat. There we go. Okay, a little bit of an up effect right there, so we'll keep track of the effects. So effects up, and we'll go ahead and put that there. And an up effect is just like a riser, white noise riser, tonal riser, just an effect that goes up, because it creates that anticipation for what's to come. All right, and then we got this cool little crash fill. I like tracking fills, so we're going to track that. Cool. So there we go. A little bit of a clap fill too. Maybe we'll just call this fill. There we go. So we'll put fill up there. And then this is an edit. So I'm just going to map that to edit. And you can see like we're just mapping high level. So like if you're going to kind of use this as an arrangement map, then, you don't have to do anything crazy. You just kind of follow along and get your own sounds. And of course, by the way, you're able to get this MIDI map once we're finished with it. Link in the description. Let's keep going. I told you once. Okay, cool. So this is cool because this is going to be slightly different than a typical arrangement. This immediately reminds me of like a kind of Cloonee, Chris Lake style arrangement, where even Kyle Watson will do this too a lot, where they have like an intro break right here, and then they kind of go into what I call a hook drop. And a hook drop is simply a drop that has a hook in it, right? Nothing crazy. Hook over groove. Yep. And The important thing is two things. Number one, let's contrast that with what typically happens. What typically happens is after like 16 bars of beat intro, you move into a bass drop. And a bass drop is just simply where you drop the bass. You had the drums, now you're bringing in the bass. And that's usually what DJs will kind of like mix in through. And then after the bass drop, then you go into a break. But here we're going right from beats intro to a break. Not the biggest deal, just DJ. This is all for DJs, except for right here. This is where a DJ would probably mix in right here. And the second important thing is if you're going to go into a break like this, you have to just introduce the bass line. You've got to introduce the bass line. The most important thing that must happen before a hook drop begins, whether you're going to do the traditional intro bass drop break, or like this, like what Cloonee's doing here, Kyle Watson, Fisher in some tracks, and Chris Lake a lot of times, is you do intro and then intro break. Whichever one you do, before you get to the hook drop, you have to introduce the drums. That's easy because that's going to be in the intro. The hook, and then the bass line in some way. Because those three things, the drums, the bass, and the main hook, are typically the things that are going to play together in that first hook drop. And what you want to do is you want to kind of intro them in some way, typically kind of separately, before they finally all come together. Because what creates the resolution in a hook drop is the fact that what came before it hasn't yet all come together. You know, you can think of this as like puzzle pieces that are not yet fit together yet. And you're looking at it and you're like, man, like I know these fit together. And then the drop is when those puzzle pieces come together and you're like, yes, I knew it. You know, I knew that was going to happen. Now, the listener's not really doing that consciously, but they know it, they feel it. And so when you get into that hook drop, it's a resolution of all those things that were introduced previously coming together. All right. And so before we even get in here, we're going to expect the bass line, which happens right here, to come in some way. All right. So let's now get a little channel for the vocal. So vocal. There we are. And cool. So let's bring that right there. That's going to duplicate across. And what we got?
I told you once, now I tell you twice. I'm not going to be a fool. I told you once.
Okay, some little kind of cool crash thing seems to be a little bit of a character in this track. So maybe we'll kind of map that out.
I told you once. I told you once, now I tell you twice.
Maybe on this one, I'll just do the three that's going on. So it's happening over here. Ba, ba, ba. And then bum, bum, ba, dum, bum, bum. And then we'll just go like this too. Cool. All right.
I told you once, now I tell you twice. I'm not gonna be a fool.
One thing here is I haven't listened to the original song. I don't even know. I don't know anything about it. But here we're just repping. There's just 2 repetitions of the title line.
I told you once, now I tell you twice. I'm not gonna be a fool. I told you once, now I tell you twice. I'm not gonna be a fool.
All right. So right away, we're just hit with the title line of the track. Not gonna be your boo. All right. And then going in over here.
I told you once, now I tell you twice.
All right. 4 times. 4 repetitions of that, right? Producers always want to know, man, is this too repetitive? You know, let's say like a producer repeats a vocal like this 4 times. I told you once, I told you twice, I'm not going to be your boo. I told you once, I told you twice, I'm not going to be your boo. I told you once, I told you twice, I'm not going to be your boo. I told you once, I told you, is like me doing that. It feels repetitive. Is it repetitive? Yeah, by definition. You know, but the thing is, like, the question is it palatable? Will the listener like tune it out? Well, what's happening here? The vocal continues repeating, but what changes isn't so much the vocal. Maybe it changes over here. I don't know. But what changes isn't the vocal, but the context around it. So if you repeat something and then you kind of change what happens around it, that's a way that you can break up repetition or make repetition work in a great way. Like the more you repeat something, that is going to stick in their frickin' brain. But if you kind of change the interaction of that sound with other sounds, or if you change the context, moving from a break to a drop, you can repeat things all day long, And so the question, is this too repetitive, just will never have a definitive answer, Like, even if you repeated something throughout the entire track, here's a great example of that. The shake on Tool Room, Ellis Moss. The freaking just repeats the whole time. But, wait, I forgot what the actual rep is, though. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to think of it on the spot right now. But it's the changing context in that track that makes it really cool, and how it kind of evolves over time. But anyway, let's keep going here. Let's map it out.
I told you once, now I tell you twice.
And there we go. We got that beat. So now we have been introduced to all the main characters of the track, the drums, the bass, and the main vocal. And then they're going to come together over here. Now, I think this is going to be a verse, but that's okay, because all the vocals been introduced, and same with the drums and bass. So let's map out the bass. There we go.
I told you once, now I tell you twice. I'm not gonna.
All right, and then we're getting a clap, so we're starting to kind of pick that energy back up.
I told you once.
Oh, and there's our little crash friend. Let's go like that, or actually maybe I'll just copy this over. Cool.
I told you once, now I tell you twice. I'm not gonna be a fool. 'Cause when it
One thing to kind of note is there's a kind of nice delay on this bass, which is kind of cool. I'll just mark that.
'Cause when it comes down to my heart,
Okay, so yeah, here the vocal changed a little bit.
I'm not gonna be a fool.
So reason why I like this change right here, like we get the repetition here, and the reason why I like this change is because it signals there is a change in the vocal. Because like if we just like went into a completely different vocal right here, which I think it does,
I told you once, now I tell you twice.
or not, that's okay. But I'm pretty sure this is going to be kind of like a verse, I'm actually really glad that it started with the whole thing, but this would be a repetition. This signals that the vocals, hey, is going to change. Like it's not always going to be the same vocal every time. So if you went into like a verse or a completely different vocal here, then it would be a little bit more digestible, or whatever. But I like that we're going into the not going to be boo the title line here, because the most important line of the track which was introduced right here with no drums or groove yet, it then gets hit right away in the beginning of the drop, the title line right there, right from the start, in the drop. So that's cool. All right, moving on. Let's see.
'Cause when it comes down to my heart,
Maybe what I'll do is I will keep track of when the title line plays, and I'll color the title line a nice yellow color because yellow is bright. Okay.
I told you once, now I tell you twice. I'm not gonna be a fool. 'Cause when it comes down to my heart, it's not gonna be abused.
All right, cool. So let's get the beat over here. We got the bass now, and then we got the vocal playing, and we got that kind of response to the title line.
It's not gonna be abused. Now I've been knocked down and stepped.
Oh, where's our crash friend?
I told you once, now I tell you twice.
Right there.
I'm not gonna. Now I've been knocked down.
One thing I should probably pay attention to is the little drum fills that are happening. I don't know if we're going to map all those out, but just to kind of listen to them and comment on them. Let's see.
I told you once, now I tell you twice.
I mean, the thing to point out is that these little things are happening in the gaps of the vocal, right? And so I told you once, one of the things is like when you're producing, just always take the listener's perspective. Do what you want, be creative and stuff, but at a certain point, just step back. Probably one of the easiest things to do is just go to the other side of the room and play your track out loud, and just listen as if you're a listener. And then another thing I love to do is just export my tracks and completely leave the studio. You take on a totally different mindset when you're out of the studio, because you can't do anything. You can't like, twist knobs on the synth. You just have to stand there and listen to your track, absorb the track. You hear it in a completely different way, and you're kind of forced to take the listener's perspective. But the reason why I'm bringing up the listener's perspective here is because the placement of these claps is just a good example of an extremely simple concept and principle of just like, don't freaking overstuff things, right? So the vocal plays, and then there's a little bit of a gap, and then you get a little clap fill, right? It's just a way to re-engage the listener, right? In the gaps of the vocal. But there's not all these crazy fills going on when the vocal is playing. It's just straight drums, and then the vocal stops, and then boom, little clap fill, and then the vocal picks up. Very simple,
I told you once, now I'll tell you twice. I'm not gonna.
Man, I just feel like ranting today, apparently. But like, sometimes I'll hear that. What the heck I was going to say? I wanted to say that the top producers, like when I've done so many of these breakdowns, right, and also just worked with a bunch of producers, and it's like the top guys, they just never don't do the basics. It might seem simple that I'm pointing this out, but that means that it's so easy to overlook or discard. But these are the things to not overlook or discard, right? This is an example of really simplifying down to the pure basics. And if you get those basics right, you're going to be in really good shape. If you've got good drums, good bass, an awesome vocal that is confidently presented in the track and not overstuffed, and just keeping the listener engaged with little ear candies like that clap fill and the vocal gaps, like that's all you need, right? Because the listener really is just like singing along with the vocal. And if the vocal's not there, like, what's going on? And then you hit them with a little clap fill, they're like, oh, that was interesting. And then you just keep going, All right, moving on.
I told you once, now I'll tell you twice. I'm not gonna be a fool.
And there you go. So a little bit of a call response in the clap fills. Okay, so slightly just one extra dimension of sophistication added there, right? Because here we get one clap, and here we're going to get a response to that clap. Pop, pop. And so you get a double clap. So one clap, two claps. A little bit of a call response there. All right.
'Cause when it comes down to my heart,
Repetition. Oh my gosh. I repeated that clap fill. Is it too repetitive? All right. I won't be mean, but there you go, and then maybe we'll get a double clap, but I anticipate maybe not, because we're starting to approach the end of the 8 bars. So we might get a slightly more dramatic fill over here. Let's check it out.
it's not gonna be abused. Now
Okay, let me see. Okay, so you can hear that extra little bass note in there, but we're still getting the double clap. So we get that. That creates a little bit of predictability in the brain, which is always a good thing. But then we get that extra little bass note right here. Boom, right? Extra little excitement of jumping right there on the bass.
Now I've been knocked down and stepped on.
So here now we're getting into a verse, right? So cool.
Now I've been knocked down and stepped on.
Okay, now we're getting a nice little hat lift, which is a very bright hat lift, or it's kind of like a hat pattern, I'll call it, and we'll call it bright, because we don't need to be any more specific than that. It's just brighter than the other one. And so if I was going to look for a pattern, I'm not going to look for a hat that's like kind of exactly in the space of the main hat. I'm going to look at one that is relatively brighter. So let's map out the pattern of this just for fun.
Now I've been knocked down and now I've been knocked down. Now I've been knocked down and stepped on. And it's
Okay, cool. And then here. Can I repeat this, or is that being premature? Let's see.
now I've been knocked down and stepped on. And it's cold down on the floor. And I don't recall seeing your hair when I couldn't take anymore. Back it up.
Oh, wow. That's playing there even under the crash. You could have probably muted that, but not a big deal at all. So, there. we got this. And look at now, this is playing with the kind of clap fill, right? So another way to think about this too is that clap fill, I'm not going to map it out, but the clap fill is kind of playing over, what is this, about a bar or 2 bars? 2 bars, geez. 2 bars. And then so we get that one little clap after 2 bars, then we get the double clap after another 2 bars. And then this pattern is playing over 1 bar. So this is kind of cool because you have these different lengths of patterns. And that's another way to start kind of breaking up repetition, you know? But let's keep going. Very, very simple though. So simple, right? Like think about what's going on. You've got drums, kick, bass, hat. You've got the bass line, you've got the vocal, and you've got those little kind of claps. And now we're just lifting a little bit with this kind of brighter hat, playing this kind of like pattern right here. All right, let's see what happens over here. Okay, cool. I'm very excited because of the way that Cloonee is bringing in the synth. He's bringing it from the back of the mix, from the back wall. If you think about the depth dimension of the mix, you got front to back. So the very back wall is like deep reverb. And that's, I really like that. So that's coming up right here. That's the synth. So, long, deep reverb here. And then we'll just go up because it's coming in like that. Okay. And then here we got a little bit of a crash fill. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Is he playing right there? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Cool. All right. All right, then the beat right here is just a clap. So now we're getting into a break. So maybe what we'll start doing is kind of mapping out the high level arrangement here. And cool. So this is going to be just the intro. And intro, we'll also color that brown because it's just the intro. Then we have an intro break. And my little color for that is just blue for break. And then we have drop. We'll call this hook drop. And we'll color that red. And then we're getting into a little bit of a break over here. I'm pretty sure that it's just 8 bars. So we'll just do a BK for break. And there we go. Okay. And then now we're in the break. So what do we do in a break? We go over this, every time. So we'll go over it again. A break, the main things we want to do is we want to give them a break. And what does that mean? Removing a low end in some way. And here, Clooney's completely removing the kick, almost all the drums except for the clap. So all the drums except for the clap. Removing the bass. So is he removing the low end? Yes. All right. So give him a break. And then keep the groove alive in some way. And he's doing that by leaving that clap in there. Another thing we want to do is hit him with the main thing. So the vocal is still in there, but the real thing is that synth is kind of coming up. And one of the things you can think about breaks is breaks will always kind of preview what's to come. So even if we look back over here, this previews what's to come over here, right? This break is introducing this sound right here to preview what's to come. Another way to kind of think about that is that breaks introduce elements that are going to be played later on in drops. You know, if you want to introduce a sound, introduce it in a break and then play it over a drop. Again, that's a change in context. Check this out. So the synth is coming up through here. The synth is coming up through here. It plays through here, and then it's going to play over here. Like, what is that? About a minute? Okay, that's not that long. So 45 seconds. If I play my synth for 45 seconds, is that too long? No, because look at how many contexts it changes. It comes up in the break here with a deep reverb, is playing through here with a reverb, and is moving towards dry. We'll look at that in a second. And then in the drop, it's now dry. So not only is it playing in 3 different contexts, but it's also evolving, And so but the synth part itself, yes, is absolutely repetitive, but it's the evolution of it. It's the automation. It's the changing of the context around it that allows it to be repetitive. You want things to be repetitive in dance music because if something is repetitive, it's hypnotic, right? And that's what you want to do. You want to lock people into the moment and hypnotize them. All right, let's keep going.
When I couldn't take anymore, back it up. Don't just tell me that your love's for real. You got to prove what you really feel. Don't just say you wanna be my man. I've got to know that you understand.
All right, cool.
Say you wanna be my man. I've got to know that you understand. Hey boy, you better back it.
All right, cool. Let's go get this guy over here. Awesome. All right, and then where's the vocal? Let's get the vocal in here.
Don't just tell me that your love's for real. You got to prove what you really feel. Don't just say you wanna be my man. I've got to know that you
Okay, so let's get rid of this. There's also a snare roll in there, so building a little bit of tension.
Don't just say you wanna prove what you really feel. Don't just say you wanna be my man.
Okay, so right through there. Awesome. And nice and bright comes in hot. I like that. And then...
I've got to know that you understand.
Okay, cool. So vocal, this kind of like tails out. Cool. Probably one of my favorite examples of a vocal doing this is Patrick Topping's B sharp say not. The end, I think the last drop, I think it's just crazy if I'm remembering correctly. But anyway.
Hey boy, you better back it up.
Okay, so new little vocal here.
Hey boy, you better back it up. You better back it up.
Okay, so maybe we can start coloring these different colors, like call back it up. I don't want to write out all the lyrics. Oh, back it up. But I'm looking at all this blue, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense when you're looking at it.
'Cause when it comes down to my heart, it's not gonna be abused.
It's when it comes to my heart. There we go. What's this?
'Cause when it comes,
Same thing. Yep. So repeat of this right there. So title, a little bit of expansion, and then that gets repeated right there. So what's this guy right here?
now I've been knocked down and stepped on.
Oh, geez. Now I've been up, down. That's good enough.
And I don't recall seeing your hair.
I don't recall. There, that's good enough.
Don't just tell me that your love's for.
Don't just tell me. There we go.
Don't just say you wanna be my man. I've got to know that you understand.
Okay, there we go. Good enough.
You better back it up.
Cool. A nice little reverb transition right there. So verbing out.
You better back it up.
That is cool. So this guy jumps an octave here. So let's kind of zoom in and put octave there. I'm just going to change that to a nice little color just to make it pop out a little bit. Cool. Okay, and now, here we go. I did not think that my rants earlier were going to totally pay off really well, but this is a good example. Look at this. That synth is playing for 16 bars. Man, because Cloonee likes the 16 bar drops. And Yeah, so 16 bars, but here 8 bars, and then here another 16 bars. But look at how the change of context that happens, right? And the little kind of things that happen on the synth itself. So here, verbing out. So watch this. So synth just playing some more. Verbing out because of the transition into what I call a false start right here. Okay, and now a new context with no drums, okay? And then a little change on the synth, just popping it up an octave, which is hilarious, but really cool at the same time. Moving it back down to the octave, and then moving back into the drums, but now it's a strip. A strip for me is just kick bass mostly. All right, and then just lifting with the clap right there. So let's get rid of this here. So strip for me is going to be a nice deep purple color there. So we've got a strip. So just I'll just write just kick. But notice how there's no vocal here too. So that's a massive change in context. So here we had the vocal. And then the interesting thing here is, man, I just wish, I wish I could convey, how important this stuff is. This, what is this called? This little false start right here ends the vocal. So we're moving into a section now without any vocal. And so there's this dramatic entry to that section that almost just kind of chokes or puts a period on this vocal performance. All right, so here's the vocal playing. Boom. So now interesting part, and then we move into a section with no vocal, right? This is almost like a marker, a signpost of completely shifting gears in a way, you know? So I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty sophisticated. Now, is this consciously done? No, it's definitely felt. I mean, who knows? Maybe Clooney's sitting there being all mad scientist about it, but I highly doubt it. He's trying to make a cool track. He plays it live. He sees what happens, and he goes back and works on the track a little bit more. But that is what's going on. That just kind of allows us to really switch gears into this section. So pretty cool. That's pretty sophisticated. But it's still simple, right? But the principles at work there are sophisticated. All right, so we got a nice little up effect right there, same as what happened before.
Now I'm not trying to judge you.
All right, now we got this Reese bass coming in. It's kind of a mono Reese bass. So
Now I'm not trying to judge you. Your intentions might be fine.
okay, and now we're gonna get some more vocal. Let's put that in there. I don't know why I only made that 4 bars, but what can you do? So
Now I'm not trying to judge you. Your intentions might be fine. The last time I trust.
okay, and then let's go over here.
The last time I trusted someone, all I could do was break down and cry. The last.
All right, clap. So another clap move, right? This an element that he keeps on using to bring back the beats. But here we are in another break over here. I got to see how this kind of develops, but for now we'll say that it's the break. So here we have another drop. So we'll do hook drop. But this one is, we could define it as the synth, right? And this one is synth. This one is vocal. Now this one's a little bit more A-B, so we can kind of do this, right? So we can Command E, we'll do hook drop to A, and it'd be synth, vocal, vox plus synth. This is going to be hook drop to B, and this is going to be just synth. Right? Synth, we'll do strip, synth plus strip. All right? And this is mostly just vocal with a little bit of a lift right there. So nothing too complicated right here. But this one's definitely a solid A section, B section. All right. And then here we are in the break.
Now I'm not trying to judge you. Your intentions might be fine.
Cool. I love that. I love that filtered kick. So the kick is going to be HPLP, which if we look, is it high pass or is it just low pass? Yeah, it's high pass too. Look at that Reese. That Reese is huge. That would sound insane in a club. That's cool. So I love that kick though. That kick is super deep, just creating so much room for the Reese and the hi-hat and the vocal, but just giving this kind of low-end pulse to the track. That's awesome. Okay, so and then what else? When it comes to heartache and pain, and then this is also just plus hat right there. I spelled kick wrong. Cool. So Reese continues. When it comes to heartache and pain, there'll be no deja vu. Back it up. Don't need no one to wipe the feet on my heart. I've got to know that it's love from the start. Man, this is just an interesting thing to notice. Like the title line has not come back yet. Like this is all just different vocals. So it's funny because I think the last track I broke down was After Party. And that track uses a vocal that's like 1 bar in length. This is a joint for the after party, right? This vocal is, which is a great reference in After Party, is a great reference for a track that just has one little lyric. Actually, the last track I broke down was Murder Mystery by Jamie Jones. Similar idea. He just has one tiny little vocal and just using it in different ways. So After Party and Murder Mystery are really good references. If you find like a really short vocal, then you can use those to kind of see how you can tell the story in different ways, right? Just take different ideas from it. This is a good example of how to take an entire track, an entire a cappella, and use it, right? Mostly just kind of going back and forth between the a cappella and some kind of sound design thing, right? That's it. But good reference for that. And that's one of my favorite things is like, if you're going to be using two things, like if you have a vocal, it's cool to find references that have a vocal of a certain length, right? It makes it a lot easier to reference. You can reference any way you want, you know? Or if you have a reference that you're starting with, then just take note of how long the vocal in the track plays for, right? Not necessarily across the track, but like, is it a 4-bar vocal? Is it an 8-bar vocal? Is it a 16-bar vocal? And then what you can do is you can use that parameter there as a way to go look for something to kind of start experimenting with. It makes it really easy to follow reference tracks if you start with getting kind of the length of the different sounds in a similar way. All right. So, and the length of this sample is a whole vocal. So just interesting, the different reference tracks and how you can use them for different ways. You know, here we go. When it comes to heartache and pain, there'll be no deja vu. Back it up. Don't need no one to wipe the feet on my heart. I've got to know that it's love from the start. Your hugs and kisses. All right, there we go. And we got our little Crash friend back over here. Any other crashes? Crash, we forgot you. Sorry, Crash. What about over here? Here? Oh my gosh. Okay. Cool. All right, moving on. All right, we got that bass back. So this is the main break and build. Is that right? Yeah, it is. Okay, so main break and build, this whole thing is just, the main break and build to build all that tension back to the last drop over here. And I love the last drop over here. I love the way that thing is structured, but we'll see. Man. I was just saying how the title line hasn't come up over here. And I just remembered what kind of happens over here, which makes me think, again, this isn't conscious, but maybe it is though, because this is just so well done. But notice how like the vocal is, the title line of the vocal is bookending the track. I'm getting way ahead of myself right now because we got to get over to here, but the vocal that plays over here is the title line vocal. And so notice how all this vocal in the middle is not the title vocal. It's just in the very beginning and the very end. If you've ever studied, like, what would it be? Is it psychology or behavioral economics? I mean, if you've ever heard of those, there's a thing called the peak end bias, where people really only remember things, the peak moment of a track and the end of, well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it in terms of a track. I'm talking about an experience. People only really remember the peak of the experience and then what happened at the end of the experience. And you could think about that like with your friends, like a festival ended or a club ended and you leave, you probably are talking about what just happened. So you're talking about the end of your experience. And then the conversation will move into be like, dude, what, do you remember this or do you remember that? And so now you're remembering the peaks, Anyway, the reason why I'm bringing this up is like, well, in a track, the peak of the experience is typically going to be the climax anyway. And that happens to kind of be the end. But it just made me think like you're bookending it. The middle part is like whatever, but you start it. So immediately people know in the club, this is the track. And then you end the track that way too. Anyway, that's definitely an example of overthinking. But is it? I don't know. All right, let's keep going though.
Your hugs and kisses, they don't mean a thing. I've got to know that it's real love you bring. Your hugs and kisses, they don't mean a thing. I've got to know.
Okay. Your hugs and kisses.
Your hugs and kisses, they don't mean a thing. I've got to know that it's real love you bring. If you want some love, give some in return. 'Cause it's my love, you're gonna have to earn. I need some
All right. So what's happening here?
that it's real love you.
So this is clap right here. Let's get the clap back.
Your hugs and kisses,
We got the crash. Let's bring the crash right here.
your hugs and kisses, they don't mean a thing. I've got to know that it's real love you bring. If you
Okay, check out how the low, the bass is high passing, but it's high passing down. So the low end is getting more prominent as the track plays right here.
If you want some love, give some money.
So this is clap plus hat.
If you want some love, give some in return. 'Cause it's my love, you're gonna have to earn. I need someone.
Something that's cool here is I think the bass just kind of goes crazy in a little bit. Like he's just kind of playing some really exciting notes.
I need someone to show me that they care.
Yeah, he's just messing around, it feels like, with the bass right here.
I need someone to show me that they care.
All right, so we got a big old snare roll again coming in hot. Coming in hot. All right.
I need someone to show me that they care.
All right, I need someone to show me.
I need someone.
Oh, and then we got the hold. Okay.
I need someone to show me that they care. I need a man who will always be there.
Okay, there, hold. Okay, for tension, right? And then we've got,
I need someone to show me that.
okay, so no drums right there, but here we got a kick roll. Kick roll.
I need someone.
So check this out. So over here, we got a high pass bass.
Kisses, they don't
Over here, you can hear the low end of the bass in there.
gonna have to
Here, low end of the bass continues.
show me that they.
But over here, we got a high pass. So this is now HP up over time. So high pass down, high pass up. And what is that? That, like, those kinds of things are the difference between, you could really just say, a professional track and like a track from an aspiring producer. Because like that automation right there where you go down, oop, things are getting more ominous. Those low ends are coming in. Oh, nope, we're building tension. We're about to explode because you're high passing the bass, and it creates that massive impact over here. But then we don't explode. We're going to go into a little bit of an extension here. So let's call this an extension. I don't know how to spell extension, apparently. Okay, extension. I think that's right. All right. Okay, so here we have a broken snare roll. Okay, is this whole thing 16ths? Wow, yeah, the whole thing is 16ths. Okay, then here we get broken. All right. Cool. And then we get I need a man. Is it man? Is that what she says?
I need a man who will always be there.
All right, badass. Okay, and then we're gonna get that effects up again over here.
I need a man who will.
Just so that the grid stays in time, I'm just gonna insert a time signature right there. That way, these nice little blocks out here are gonna stay in time. But here we go.
Always be there. I need a man who will always be there.
Cool. A little bit of a fill right here with the snare roll. Okay, so vocal tails out. Tails out. There. And this also LP down. This also low passes down. And we have the scratchy hat here for sure. Let me just see if I have been missing the scratchy hat. Yep. Okay, so here.
And I don't recall seeing your hair. Hey boy,
Okay, scratchy hat there.
you're in some deja vu.
Oh, interesting. That's how, the scratchy hat is the thing playing most of the time here. Okay.
Really, really love your friend.
Good. But this hat pattern hasn't come back at all, has it?
I've been knocked down and stepped.
No? Okay, let's see if it comes back. I don't think that it will, which cool. I love that. Where a producer just has this thing that just fills, that serves a specific role in that section because that's what they were just kind of feeling, you know? It's a lift, it's a principle, but it's unique to that moment. I love that.
Now I've been knocked.
And then we go, oh. What the heck? And then we're going back to this vocal over here. All right. My guess is Cloonee wanted to go for this vocal because of that oh. Like, that's just cool. It just lifts, keeps that energy high. But the back it up, it has no connection to the prior lyrics here. Unless in the original track that's what happens, but my guess is no. That's not what happened. He's just reaching for this. My guess, you know, is that because of that oh, like it just allows you to kind of, you know, get that extra energy there without saying too many verse lyrics.
I told you once.
And now we get back to the title vocal. Freaking A. That's crazy. I love that. That's so cool. All right. And he's highlighting the return by doing what, right? It's a moment. You got to realize they haven't heard the title line in the like till way back over here, which is like 2 minutes ago, you know? And so bringing it back, especially when it's the title line, like it's a moment, you know? It's like, oh yes, I remember that. And so that's why that false start right here is there, you know, just cutting it, just letting that vocal have its space to trigger the listener and just make their brain explode, you know, like.
I told you once, now I tell you twice.
Awesome. And then we get a return to the synth as well. Now the title line is not going to pay off. It's just going to, well, not right here at least. It's just going to do calls. So we'll do title call. And we'll bring that over here. And so he's just doing calls right here. And then the title line is going to pay off over here.
I told you once, now I tell you twice. I told you.
All right, a little bit of an edit. There's so many edits in here. Whatever. I'm not even going to track them, but. Okay, so this is a strip again. So let's just color this purple. So we'll just do a strip.
I told you once, now I tell you twice. I'm not gonna be a fool. I told you once, now I tell you twice. I'm not gonna be a fool.
Cool. Let's get the crash. This guy here. Cool. Okay, and then we're going back to the synth. I'm just handing off back and forth. We got the hat like that.
I told you once, now I tell you twice.
Ooh, we're bringing this back. I wasn't sure. Right as I was saying that, I didn't know if it was going to come back. Here it is. Here it is.
Tell you twice. I told you once.
Crashes, more crashes. Cool.
I told you once, now I tell you twice. I told you once, now I tell you twice.
Any other crashes?
I told,
Crash over here.
I told you once, now I tell you twice.
All right. Okay, and then just like before, this guy kind of just verbs out as a transition out, and then so those double kicks too, playing throughout, like the same idea as the clap that we were talking about. And then a little crash at the end. Why not? Okay. So really cool. I was saying before that I really like the structure of this because like we get all this momentum with the vocal coming out of this build section here over here. And then it's just like, check this out. So here, this is just kind of a return to the groove, letting the momentum of the vocal kind of keep going for a little while, especially with that O. Like that O just keeps that momentum and the excitement of the vocal going. But then here we do a little bit of a switch to get the title vocal back in, call on the title vocal, bringing the synth back in, and then the call of the vocal gets paid off here in the strip. So right here, what I was saying with the false start, there was a false start here to make that moment, the return of the title vocal, special. Right? To really highlight that coming back. And then check this out too. The entire, now that the title vocal's playing over here, it's over a strip to really highlight it coming back. So everyone on the dance floor, man, like is just singing that line, right? There's no drums to really distract you. It's just kick, bass, and the title line vocal playing over the track at the end of the song, hammering it into the brain. The vocal's done. And then we just get that little synth to finish it off, and then it verbs out. Also, a little bit of a structural thing. Here we get a synth lift in the second 8 bars, and then a synth lift here in the second 8 bars as well. And then just outro with the beats. But man, really simple track. I need to finish the drop over here, so we'll just do hook drop 3. So it's an HD3 formula. And we'll just kind of extend that there like that. And then this is just going to be outro. I'll just copy this over there. But okay, so takeaways from this track is, again, like if you're going to be using an acapella, you can use this track as an example of how to use an acapella. Probably the coolest thing for me in this track is just the thing I keep returning to is using the title line of the vocal here, not playing it anywhere else in the track, and then bringing it back at the very end of the track. And so strategic with its return too, like with that false start, kind of making that return of the title vocal, the main vocal, a moment, and then making like almost like a chanting. You're setting up like a chanting moment in the club or a festival where like everyone's going to be singing this at the top of their lungs, especially because of that strip. It just showcases that title line, which brings me back to like the freaking peak end bias. Like, man, that is very strategic. I'm not going to lie. So that's a really good takeaway too. If you just want something to stand out, throw it over a strip, especially the title line. So really cool. And yeah, if we just kind of look at the structure, we just got the intro break. Just if you're going to do the intro break, just make sure you bring in the bass so that all of the stuff comes together in that first drop. And then so we got a first drop, and then we got a little bit of a break right here. And this break introduces the synth that gets played over in the next drop, right? And so think about this. So we got the vocal. Whoops. So this is primarily a vocal drop right here. And then we kind of work that synth in. That synth kind of becomes more prominent through the break because it's going to preview what's to come. And then the synth is playing over here. All right. And then we got the main break and build, which is just kind of like, mostly just vocal with some changing drum context underneath it. Big ass freaking snare roll coming in right here, just coming in hot with 16ths. A little bit of a cool extension right there. Some DJs hate that. Some don't care, whatever. Cloonee's playing his own tracks. Everyone's going to be playing Cloonee's tracks, so it doesn't matter. And then the last drop is ultimately setting up the return of that title vocal and then going into the outro. So extremely simple, extremely well executed, very cool vocal. I'm not going to be your boo. Like, just I like the sound of the drums. So really cool track. And yeah, if you got your own comments, leave them down below. If you got questions about this, leave them down below. Don't forget you can download this MIDI map to use as a reference. And that's all I got. So I will see you in the next breakdown. Peace.